Hello. Uh, it's everything's lightly. My voice was not heavy right there. It did like a thing. Guys, it's South Carolina. I'm back home. We had people are cool and life is brilliant. And then they're suffering. And then somehow in it all, we make friends. And I just want everybody to be free of the computer mind. I'm on the computer. I'm not trying to be righteous. Today, our sponsor, Conrad's Jerky Company, see it right here, right there. I'm eating some right now. A beautiful small business reaches out every month and sponsors us. I eat jerky, but most importantly, we sell you on an idea, which is that small families doing small things like businesses or, I don't know, a little thing between neighbors where they set up a tent and then they have a barbecue together. All this kind of stuff is in the super tradition, which is in the first things tradition, which is first humans, then plans, then maybe even a project. That whole thing is happening at Conrad's Jerky Company, Andrew and his family. And I'll just say that what I like to do is say that we have a sponsor. And that's the coolest thing going for us. Because we have someone that cares and also knows how to make money. So we send this beef jerky with our field workers whenever they depart. Because we fly them through. I'm eating it. It's so rich. We fly them through Greenville here where the restaurant is, and then they take off for 2 years overseas. And when they do that, the last thing they have we put in their bag is this beef jerky right here. So support us by supporting their beef jerky. First Things is the promo code. You can find it in the show notes. ConradsDeli.com. Buy some jerky. Let's get to the show. All right. Andrew, you can cut that or not, but I got to chew myself into this show. I'm going to return to this image of something like a symbolos, which is something like a center, where the invisible things meet the visible things, and they live in balance with one another, which of course is an image of Christ. God became man so man could become like God. This is our whole goal in life, is to live like Christ, right? Like a God, an invisible. So if you think about that, if you don't think about that, and we had some comments from people that don't think about that. They're like, I don't roll like that. Then I think the thing I want to show you right now as I share my screen, the thing I want to show you, I think, is a fair representation. It's a fair representation of how we've gotten through the world here in this place we call modernity. Fundamentally, last time we created a continuum, right? A line connected at each end by the word diabolos with something like symbolos in the middle. And right now I have it. If you're looking, I have it on the screen. And if you see, it was enjoined last week by the picture of the two-headed eagle, which I'm also showing on the screen right now. And to summarize, and you could go back and watch it, but to summarize, I was trying to say something like the ancient Byzantines, those who adopted Orthodoxy, Christianity, after having been Westerners, Greco-Roman pagans, and then all of their satellite cultures, the ones who adopted Christianity and then started to integrate this Christian life into the world, this was their way of understanding themselves as one body, two heads, right? As one body, sort of that which is, let's call it right brain, artistic, mystical, somewhat found within the coven, within the womb, within the mystical center of the dome or the sphere, and then that which is more masculine, pointed, driven, black and white, inclined, right? Inclined to mathematics, physics. These are the two worlds. And what we tried to say last time is, and this is where I'm going to stop summarizing, what we tried to say last time is, or what I'm trying to say, and again, this comes from a study of history, and it comes from fundamentally an immersion into the old world cultures that are First Things Foundation works in, including my own life. What I find is that there's kind of and Ian McGilchrist talks about this, a right brain, left brain reality, where in the modern age, we've gone full left brain. I think I got that right. I never can remember. The point is, we've gone full belief in matter. And if you look at the comments, I was talking to one person, and I'm just trying to figure out what they mean by a study of, or evidence, or proof, and what they mean, and what everyone means, including me and you, because we've been raised in this part of the world, is matter will show that we're right. It will be proven because something fleshy or material will turn out to show the evidence that the rational mind will then engage and say, aha. And that engagement will be evidence or proof. See, I did a study. And so that part of the world I'm looking, if you're looking right now, I'm looking at this continuum. It exists in this image that I'm using on the left, and it's dominated by pure matter, or the idea that reality is found within objective reality found in matter. This is science. On the other end, if you go all the way to the other side, the right, there's something about gnosis, the invisible, the unseen, the things you can't touch, right? There's something truthful about those things. People live in that space. They live in feelings and love and the unseen and the magical and mystical, right? And there's something like a type of life in that space, something like gnosis, Gnosticism, right? Where everything's changing all the time. It's hard to get a feel for what's true. McGilchrist, who, by the way, go back, we interviewed him, and many, many others have been wrestling with this throughout time. And what I think Christ is the ultimate, because he's God, is the ultimate unity of both objective material reality and pure, let's call it, spiritual reality. So, what about Candace? Candace, if you really watch, unfortunately, I do sometimes really watch. And the reason I say unfortunately, because I got other stuff to do in life. However, we all have our moments. So I'm speaking on behalf of those who kind of know her show. It's very clear that what irritates people the most in the world called media, or let's call it the world of communications, where people communicate thoughts and theories, that space is most aggravated with this person, Candace, if she's real. I think she is. They're most aggravated when she says stuff like, if you know, you know. Right? Intuition, my mommy senses, my spider senses. And then she riffs off of this concept that it's pretty obvious. And someone screams, evidence, show evidence. She's like, F your evidence. I know. And then also here's some evidence. If you ever watch shows, she does present ideas that demand objective study, like was there a plane at a particular place at a particular time? But if you look, she kind of doesn't care. And what I'm trying to say is she is the emerging character in this world right now. She is the emerging right brain, not politics. Don't hear that. Because in a second, I want to show you something that's really important. And that voice is aggravating for the material, let's call it majority. The material majority in the media who supposedly go out and check facts, which they don't anyway. In other words, everybody's starting to argue from this place of intuition, but she's just doing it with a ferocity that is driving the old school nuts. Old school here being the material new school compared to human history. Let's investigate that right now. Also, let's do a toast to aging. This is to old ass people. This is to me and my cohorts. I'm not going to say Jonathan Pageau's old. He's kind of old though. To old people. Because we were just hanging out. I mean, we were hanging out. I was hanging out with Neil. I was hanging out with a whole bunch of people. And they're old. And I love them. And they bring the wisdom. Guile Marjos. All right. I think on the screen right now, if Andrew's showing it, is my face in a bubble, which is disconcerting. And then a Christmas tree. It's in the spirit of the season. What if I said Jesus is the reason for the season? Right now I can hear my friends, my atheist friends. They just get so mad when I say that. But they should, because it's kind of stupid. It kind of rhymes but it's pithy. So let's get a little deeper. We can talk about Christmas. We'll do one on those later. But here's this one. This is a continuation of the original idea that what's breaking down that the crazy people might actually be telling the truth. If you look on the screen, I'm going to show you essentially the lineage of those who have taught us how to know ourselves. Okay? This is a group of men primarily that have taught us how to know who we are, and they've taught us by telling us about our genes. Okay? So, first thing I want to tell you, if you're listening, you can go see this screen. And I don't know if hopefully Andrew's got it so you can see it, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to walk through it. This comes from an old class I used to teach. Because I'm a history guy. This is what I used to do. So you can trust me or not. See, there's a whole thing. What do you trust? Who do you trust? But let me just start by saying people have always known themselves as something like a part of a genos, a gene pool, a bloodline. And people have always known themselves as part of an ethnos, a cultural reality dominated mostly by language, what language you speak, and what customs and culture you were given by your family. And then people have always known themselves according to theos, what God you worship. And the God you worship, now pay attention to this, this is really important, has always rubbed off, let's put it that way, has always influenced your ethnos and your genos. For scientists in the audience right now, you go, that's not possible. The genes stand alone as the truth factor. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. Because you may be a tall person, but the God you worship would determine how you walked and moved around within the culture that built the temple that was too short for you, that made you bend over, that which made you bend over as a sign of humility. In other words, your genes were always interacting and being acted upon by the people, the culture, and the God that was worshipped within any given moment in time. This is just a fact. People will be shaped by who people sleep with is shaped by their ethnos and their theos as much as with their genos. And so what comes out on the other end in terms of how people look has already been shaped through this constant evolving, and I don't mind using that word here, that means changing set of choices. And that thing in its entirety will create your identity, your genos, your ethnos, and your theos. But I want to show you that since the Enlightenment And since, this is really important, since the cultural leaders of the day, since those cultural leaders, the cultural icons of the day, since our culture adopted scientists as those cultural leaders. What I mean by scientists here is people who use an atheist or deistic way of knowing. Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, right? My favorite, least favorite founding father, Benjamin Franklin, right? All of these very practical human beings who look closely at how to engineer society and create a manifest destiny. We can make our destiny manifest. All of these planners, all of these people who had this way of being and created the Constitution, a very, very practical document that allows the federal government to interact properly with the state. I like all that. It's fine. I like it. But all of that is a way of being. And that way of being is an inherited thing. And all of those people have slowly over time adopted genos as more important than theos. I'll say that again. They've adopted genos as a more important way of knowing yourself than theos, God, or who your God is. Who your genes are have become more important than who your God is. Yes. Why am I bringing this up? Because it's a really good way to understand how, in our previous conversation, those who love and worship matter get irritated when people outside of that matter paradigm, that scientific paradigm, start to assert truth, like, oh, Candace. Here's a little FYI. I'm one of the people that gets really pissed off when the science people assert truth over and over again and then demonstrate arrogance in accepting no other ways to know truth. And here are some of those people. Okay, you ready? So you can go all the way back to some of the Catholic theologians. Saint Albert Magnus, for example, starts to adopt this great chain of being idea, which kind of comes from Aristotle. But of course, Aristotle is also using a pre-Christian way of knowing, which is very scientific in nature. Jean Lamarck, he comes up with really the first theory of evolution in 1809, French guy. He says something like all organisms operate according to the law of inherited and acquired traits. And you're starting to see that this age of wisdom, the wisdom of this age starts to emphasize things like, oh, here we go. Proven genomes. Carl Linnaeus, he creates, a Swedish scientist, philosopher, creates the taxonomy of the 5 races. Basically, yellow, brown, white, red, black. Thanks, Carl. George Hegel is also going to add to this by philosophizing in this synthetic way. He says that thesis presents antithesis, which in their essence create synthesis. And that's a way of knowing who you are. Your genes A plus genes B created gene C. Herbert Spencer, who's very important in the conversation, he creates the idea of survival of the fittest, because what he's seeing is that, wait a minute, oh, the fittest genes, the fittest, how should we say, the fittest parts of our being that we can measure that dominate who we are, that part of us, genos, that part of us, wow, the tall ones survive. Erasmus Darwin, the grandfather of Charles Darwin, literally writes a book. I hate to tell you guys this. By 1794, he's writing about evolution. That's 15 years before Darwin was born. So Darwinism kind of already existed in the heart of Erasmus Darwin. Right? He wrote a book all about the warm-blooded animals have arisen from one living filament. That's a quote from his book. He didn't have any evidence for this. But why are these people consistently coming up with this kind of conversation? Thomas Henry Huxley, right? Darwin's bulldog. He coined the term agnosticism. Why? Because this theory of genos, it elevates material reality. It elevates the things we think are most important. That's material genes passed down from one to the next. None of these cats are elevating theos. They're devaluing theos. Theos going down, genos going up. Right? So Darwin, if you can see my Christmas tree, sits at the top because basically he tells the new world origin story of how genes work. He basically gives materialists a way to understand in the beginning. Before Darwin, there's no one articulating well enough how a material world would just rise up. How's a turtle? It seems like a horse is related to a dog, but how? God made it. There's an acceptance of the origin story found in Genesis by three types of people we know for sure: Muslims, Jews, and Christians. But there's all kinds of origin stories at this point, and they're all immaterial in nature. They're not proven by the material study of things. But finally, Darwin tells the story in the beginning, right? And then the book is wildly popular because all the seeds of atheism have already been laid by the philosophers of the Enlightenment. And now Darwin, a supposed scientist, is telling you how it all works. And now the materialists have something to truly believe in because there's evidence. Now, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole right now, but here's a little FYI. And if you don't like cursing, sorry, there ain't no effing evidence. Okay. That's what's ironic. There's a lot of theories, but not a lot of dinosaur bones are making a lot of concrete scientific arguments about evolution. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. Maybe another podcast. Vote thumbs up if you want that podcast, because that's actually an interesting conversation. So why am I telling you all this? What I want you to see in this document right here, let's just call it the lineage of those who believe that the material world is all there is. This is the origin story lineage of those founding fathers of a world that lives unto itself without a God. You want to know what those people say happened in order for there to be a world and for there to be humans? You should go to the place where these people are saints, universities, and the story of how we are who we are will become clear through the embrace of genos and the story of evolution. There's nothing really wrong with that, but I want to show you something. Fundamentally, if you can see, and I'm going to zoom in. Andrew, am I zooming in?
Warp drive, Mr. Scott. Ahead warp 1, Mr. Sulu.
Accelerating to warp 1, sir. 4.7. 0.8.
This is essentially the entirety of the thesis today, and then we'll get back to Candace. I think, like the brain, this is supposed to be like a head. You can see it. When we spend time on either radical end, we spend time in diabolos, and we spend time dying. Diabolos is, of course, that's what the Latins ended up in Spanish calling diabolo, the devil. But diabolos is that thing where it's that state of being where things are falling apart. Symbiolos is the state of being where things are being united. And what I'm trying to say is that over here, when we operate in this part, the left part, you're operating in a way where matter becomes your God. And I've placed our Christmas tree lineage of atheistic, scientific race scientists. Over here, where they operate under the assumption that reality is found in pure matter. And so, what I'm trying to tell you is today, that space where people operate as if matter is the way to understand reality, that is a bastardized space. It is a degraded space. And wherever you catch yourself defining yourself by your genos, and then also going to church, either your church should reject you or you're going to a church that is heretical. So say that again. If you stay in this part of your brain over here, where the objective reality about your being is found most articulated in your race, whiteness, let's say, or blackness, or brownness. These are retarded concepts, but we'll keep using them. If you stay in that space and bring that kind of thinking, being, into a church that calls itself Christian, and that church doesn't challenge that way of thinking, then you are in a heretical church. You should leave. They should challenge the hell out of you, because that church doesn't understand the true locus, center of your identity that's found in Christ. And Christ does not know you primarily by your race at all. Sorry. That it's important to you, I get it. For instance, I'm going to tell a story. When I lived in West Africa for an extended period of time for 2.5 years, I was the only, let's call him white. You want to go with white? Let's go with it. I'll go with that. That's fine. That is a very, very, very flimsy category, but I'll go with it. American might be a better category. How about this? American of European descent. We can go down the road. An Orthodox Christian American of European, I don't care. White? Fine. What's white food again? I don't even know. If you could tell me what white food is, maybe I'll even start to believe there's white people. But if you can't even identify white food, then how are you going to identify white people? Doesn't even make sense. Yellow food. Rice? Feels a little weird. Because the black people I know in West Africa eat a lot of rice, but they're not yellow. It's stupid. Oh, but I know what white outfits are, white dress. You can't even make white cultural without having your brain blow apart. So, with that rant on the side, let's go back for a second. Okay. When I lived in Africa, I was the only person that presented like I do. And guess what? I couldn't wait to be around people that present like I do. It felt good. Primarily because I could speak in English, which was a very nice thing to do because I was in my little village for months at a time. And then I would see one of my same presenting humans. We call them white. It's fine, even though I don't know what white culture is. And whites always seem to be fighting each other. You'd think they'd have more brotherhood. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Oh, wait, you can say the same about blacks. It's stupid. Here's my point. When I saw my comrades in, racial similitude, it was nice. I spoke English. We made jokes about the same stuff. We had ways of knowing each other that were quickly transcending the culture around us. I get it. And you know what we called each other? Tubob, which is the word that meant like white boy. Who called us Tubob all day long? Africans. So we called each other that because it was a way to know one another. I get that entirely and utterly. I fundamentally understand that when people share your culture, they are more likely to become known to you. This makes perfect sense. You can call those people white if you want. Here's the problem. If you're a Christian, you're not called to that particular plateau of being. You can stay down there if you want. Let's call it 10 feet above sea level. See, let's call sea level like the lowest level of human being, like Darwin's salamander that crawls out of there. That's you. Oh, but I'm that, plus I'm white? Okay, yeah, you got up out of the water. You're at a little higher plateau. Congratulations. You're still kind of a scumbag, though. You haven't evolved very far. Oh, but wait a minute. But I'm also white, and I'm of Anglo origins. Oh, look at you. Look at your identity. It's starting to, Anglos, potatoes. I get it. I'm starting to feel you a little. I get that. I kind of get that. Anglo, and I'm an American. Oh, I'm feeling you. Look, you're rising higher on the identity level. You're actually starting to be a human who has, I don't know, a baritone way about you. You have some depth. You might even be interesting at this point. But if you keep climbing, you're going to find something weird happens. Your identity becomes fundamentally, let's call it Christian, and let's call it Orthodox Christian, and then you're called to actually love all the people that don't look like you. Wait, you're actually called to take them off the road and put them into a hotel and then pay for them. Yeah. And they don't even worship the same God as you, the highest form of identity. So if you have trouble seeing in your brother a brown person, a black person, a yellow person, whatever the stupid race, thanks race guys for helping us with these dumb categories. If you can't see that you have more in common with a brown person who shares your risen Christ than you do with a white person who's a heretical Christian, if you can't see that, you ain't practicing your religion very hard. You are bad at the thing you claim to be at your highest level of identity. In other words, you're a faker. Big time. Why do I bring this up? It's because we're not called to live in the space that makes us feel better. We're called to live in the space called reality. And if you're looking at my dumb drawing, that place is Symbolos, where the spiritual world meets the world of the material, where Christ becomes God. And it's hard for our little reptilian brains to stay there. So get out of your brains. And I think that in the world we live in right now, the brain is exploding because it's become so tethered to objective material reality. It can't hold. And so people like Candace, who are basically, if you listen to her, are constantly trying to expose this material mind. She doesn't know she's doing half the time. She's naive. She's a wondrous new little baby creature that just woke up to like all the mysteries of the ancient Christian faith, or at least parts of it. I'm here to say Catholics did a lot to make it not so mystical. I'm here for that. Catholics, write me. You got to do better. You got to stop trying to prove your saints did like 3 things that sound like science. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that anymore. The church will elevate who she will. You don't have to sit there and try to prove it, okay? Based on, it's just stop doing that. My point is that wherever you see people waking up, Tucker Carlson, all these characters, let them riff. It's okay. It's not a problem. You just stay in Symbolos, man. Just be cool, stay calm. Emmanuel. And get up out of that first level of scummy plateau where you're just barely more than a salamander. Can you do that? White nationalism is not a thing. Oh, it's a thing. It's just not a thing for you. And that is more of the same, but with a twist. I hope that today all of you will consider the work we do at First Things by making a donation in the Christmas season. Every penny counts. Most of the money you send goes toward our guys who eat, sleep, drink, live in worlds that are far, let's say, behind the modern world. But we do that to unite people to the material things they need so we can gain the spiritual things we've lost. This is a true Christian mission. That the people we serve see God in us. We don't necessarily have to give a book to them for that to happen. Even if it's a holy book. Sometimes. That's today's show. I hope it was of interest. I think there's about 50,000 more things to say about this. And I'm going to keep saying it. But I also got some other stuff I want to share with you guys from the field. Can't wait. Let's keep going. I love you guys in this Christmas season. I'm an old calendar guy. So in January, I'm going to be singing my Christmas hymns in New York City. That's where all my girls live. Also, look for that. I think we're going to have a little girl conversation to try to understand some of these gender things going on. And I think we're going to bring on a bunch of young women to have a conversation with us about why do they hate men? Or is it just that the men hate themselves so much that they're no longer attractive to women? Everything's lightly. Let's keep going. Peace to you guys.